today we are going to discuss access specifiers in Java. Access specifiers in the sense we have three kinds of access specifiers. You might have studied if you are aware of C++. The access specifiers in C++ also we have public, private and protected. These are the three access specifiers as far as Java is concerned: public, private, and protected. Here at this point in time, we are not focusing on protected. Uh, when we are discussing when we will discuss inheritance, that means creating subclasses from the main class. Then only we'll discuss protected class. Now we are focusing on public and private data. For example, here in this case, here we have a class test. Here I have defined it without any access specifier. Here I have defined it as a public variable, and here it is a private variable. So when we are talking about a public variable, it can be accessed from it can be accessed by other classes that can be accessed by other class. That means it is publicly available, and this private variable is it's an encapsulated one. That means only only those methods in this function or in this class, all the methods which belong to this class can use that private variable. Nobody outside that class is allowed to access that. For example, here I have defined this integer a without any access specifier. So definitely that will also be public. Here this is public, this is private, and by default this is public. So see, this is the main program, and here we have created a new object. Obj is equal to new test means an object is created, and that object is created, and here we have variables a, b and c. These two are public and this is private. Okay, these two are public and this is private. Now now this obj is pointing to this class, this object, and obj dot a is equal to 10. That means this is 10. Okay, obj dot b is equal to 15. That's also okay. But obj.c is equal to 20 means, as this is a private variable, obj.c, this is another class, and this from this point you are not allowed to access c. That means you cannot make or you cannot assign this c as 20 from this place. Only through methods you can access this variable. Only through methods. That means this is not publicly available. It's like an object. That means what is happening inside, that is not aware to you. For example, suppose that you are watching TV and that there is an interface, and what is happening inside, that is encapsulated. Just like that, this class, what is happening inside that object, that is not aware of you. So you are not allowed to set that C from outside, but you can use these two methods, set C and get C. Set C, what is set C? You can set the value of this C using the set C function. So here obj.c assigned equal to 20, and for that I'm going to have, what is that, obj dot set c, within brackets you have to give this 20. Okay, and obj dot set c is equal to 20 means that's okay, because this function is available to you. That means that is the interface. That means what is happening inside that variable you cannot access. Directly you cannot interact with that, but using this method you can access the variable, and you can, that means obj.c20 means you can access this 20. And what is this obj.getC? If you want to access the value of this c, you can use getC as well. That means if you are printing, that means system dot out dot println what obj dot get c. If you are executing this, it will print the value 20, or it will print the value 20. Okay, that means there are two types of access specifiers at this point. That means we will discuss protected in detail when we are discussing inheritance. Now, what is the difference between public and private variable? Public is accessible to everybody, anybody outside this class, and uh, private variables are available or that can be accessed by methods of the same class or objects of the same methods of the same object or same class. Okay, so that's about access, private access specifier. And now we are going to discuss what you mean by a static variable. What do you mean by a static variable? That means here you have public static void main means. Now what do you mean by public? Public means anybody can use it. Well, that means the Java runtime environment is executing this main program. So you have to make it public. If you are, unless you made it public, you are not to execute that program. That means this main function is publicly available. And now I'm going to have what do you mean by a static function. Static is also another access specifier. Static means, so if I am putting, or if I am having a static integer variable, this is called a class variable. If I am making this integer variable with an access specifier static, then static integer means here when you are creating an object of this, here using test obj is equal to new test means you have created a test object, and in that test object, new object, this a won't be there. That means an object is having these two variables. It is not having any static variables because this static variable, all the static variables are common to all the objects created from the class. For example, suppose that you are creating three variables of three objects of type test, say obj1, obj2, obj3. Then this obj1 is having 10, 15, obj2 is having say another two variables, say 5 and 10, obj3 is having again two variables 2 and 3. That means obj1 is pointing to this object, obj2 points to this object, obj3 points to this object. Now, as this is a static variable, there is a common variable common to all these three objects. That means these objects are created from this class, and this is a class variable. This is a variable which is shared by all the instances of that class. This obj1 can use this variable, obj2 can use this variable, and obj3 can use this variable, and we have only one static variable. Static variables are common to all the objects created from that class. So this is int, and if this object is making any modification to this that be reflected and that can be accessed with. That means if you want to share or if you want to communicate, if you want a communication between different objects created from a class, can make use of static variable. That means if we are making a variable or a function static means that is common to all the objects which are created from that class, or that is a class variable. It is not the owner of that static variable is the class itself, not the object. But if you are not making a variable static, here this is not a static, this is not static. So then when you are creating an object, then an instance of this int b and int c will be there as part of the object. So if you are making a variable static, that means that variable is shared among all the objects created from that class. Okay, that's all about static variable. And here public static void main means as this is made static, then this function or this method is shared among all the instances which are creating from access demo. That's why we have made it static. That means only one function is there. As it is made public, that is accessible to everybody. And main is returning nothing. That is main. That means if you want to access that main, different instances of that function is not possible, because for all, if a class access demo, this is class access demo, and in this class you have a single function, that's why you have made it static, and that can be accessed to anybody, that is why we made it public. So at this point in time, we discussed the three concepts, that is public, private and static variable. Public in the sense anybody can access that. Private means that is accessible only inside that object. Nobody outside that object is not permitted to access or modify that data. And if you are making a variable static, that means that is shared among all the instances of or all the objects created from a particular class. Okay, that's all about public, private and static. Then there are different access specifiers like protected, then protected, automatic, etc. That they are not relevant at this point, and you have to study these three things at this point. Okay, thank you.